I've seen 66 winters come and go, and for 40 of those years I have been the sole keeper of a secret as old and deep as the forest itself. In the quiet solitude of the barn behind my home, veiled from the eyes of the world, lives a being the government has sought since a time before my own. His name is Buddy, at least that is the name I gave him, and he is what the world knows as Bigfoot. Our paths crossed when I was a young man of 26 in the year 1984. I found him at death's door in the woods that bordered my land. I stood at a crossroads that day, and the path I chose altered the course of 2 lives forever. This is the chronicle of how a simple man became the keeper of a sacred trust, and why, after all these years, I must finally break my silence. It was August of 1984. The summer had scorched the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, leaving the air parched and heavy, a place I had called home since I was just 18. The land was a legacy from my uncle, 40 acres of untamed forest, a world unto itself, complete with a modest house and a sturdy barn. It was a pocket of isolation with my nearest neighbor a full 3 miles distant. For a man like me who found solace not in crowds but in the quiet communion of nature, it was paradise. My name is Michael Jason, and in those days I was a man of simple means, a carpenter who spoke more with his hands than his voice. I'd make my way into the nearby town of Aspen, crafting decks, cabinets, and mending roofs under the Colorado sun. It was honest labor enough to keep body and soul together. A bachelor by choice, I lived a solitary life, my world populated by the pages of my books, the scent of fresh-cut wood in my workshop, and the unending peace of the forest. Then came August 14th, 1984, a day etched into my memory. The familiar rhythm of my work was shattered by a sound that made my tools fall silent. It was a cry that belonged to no creature I had ever known. A deep, agonizing lament that rolled through the ancient pines, a voice caught in the twilight between man and beast, a sorrowful plea from the heart of the wild. Instinct took over. I reached for my rifle. In these mountains, you don't venture toward the unknown unarmed. I followed that haunting call for what felt like a quarter of a mile deeper into the shadowed heart of my own land until I discovered its origin. My first thought was a bear snared in some forgotten trap, but as I parted the final curtain of ferns and brush, the truth that confronted me was from a world far beyond my own understanding. There, beside the trunk of a fallen giant, lay another. It was a titan stretched out to at least 7.5 feet, a formidable frame draped in dark brown fur, horribly matted with the stark red of blood. Its limbs were impossibly long, its shoulders a testament to immense power. And the face, oh, the face was a thing of myth and wonder, a sculpture I could have never imagined. It was a sight torn from some forgotten epic, almost human, yet tragically not. A heavy brow shadowed eyes that were deep pools of pain, yet they held a glimmer of a profound thinking mind. A Bigfoot. A living, breathing Sasquatch mortally wounded and fading away on my own land. I was stunned into silence. What would you do in a moment like that? Let me know down in the comments. A primal urge screamed at me to flee. Every cautionary tale spun around a campfire, every chilling warning of the creatures of the deep woods surged through my mind. But then its gaze met mine. And in the depths of those ancient eyes I saw a reflection of my own humanity. It was not the simple awareness of a beast, but a profound understanding, a recognition, and a soul-deep fear. This giant was afraid of *me*. With deliberate slowness I lowered the barrel of my rifle. "Easy now." I whispered the words, a fragile truce offered to a being from another world. "I'm not going to hurt you." I advanced with the caution of one approaching a fallen king. It was then that I saw the source of its agony. Its left leg was horribly savaged, caught in the rusted teeth of an old bear trap, a cruel device outlawed for years, but whose ghosts still haunted these woods, lying in wait. The wound was a festering ruin, the trap's metal fangs embedded deep within its flesh. The creature cried out again, but the sound was softer now, a low murmur of misery. It was no threat, it was a plea. I was no stranger to the suffering of wild things. I'd tended to deer, coyotes, and even a bear cub once. But this was a chapter from a forbidden book. This was a creature that, according to our world, did not exist. Its discovery would unleash a storm of scientists, men in suits, trophy hunters, and a carnival of chaos right to my doorstep. And yet gazing upon this magnificent being caught in a tableau of human cruelty, I knew I could not be the man who simply turned his back. "All right," I breathed a promise made more to my own conscience than to him. "All right, let's see what can be done." I raced back to my house, gathering my toolbox, my meager first aid kit, and a bottle of whiskey, the only medicine I had for such a monumental pain. Upon my return, he remained tracking my approach with eyes clouded by weariness. "This is going to hurt like hell," I said the words stark and honest as I uncapped the bottle of whiskey. "But if we don't free you from this iron jaw, the poison in this wound will claim you." I doused my hands in the rusty trap mechanism with the raw whiskey, and then began the grueling work of prying it open. Every muscle in its massive body went rigid and guttural sounds of agony escaped its throat, yet it offered no violence. It was as if some deep ancient part of it knew I was its only hope. For the better part of an hour I fought with the trap until, with a final groan of metal, it released its victim. The leg was a ruin, torn by deep cuts, the bone likely fractured, and the corruption of infection already creeping through the tissue. I cleansed the wound as best a carpenter could, pouring a second torrent of whiskey over the raw flesh as a crude disinfectant. The act provoked a response from the creature. That was a pure, primal roar of agony, a sound that surely sent every living thing fleeing for a mile in every direction. When it subsided, I wrapped the leg in clean bandages. "You can't stay here," I said, slumping back on my heels, drenched in sweat and the gravity of my decision. If you're as captivated by this as I was that day, hit that like button and share this story. Some secrets are meant to be told. "You need a sanctuary, nourishment, a place to mend," I murmured. "Can you stand?" The creature struggled to its feet, a valiant effort, but its body betrayed it, collapsing like a monument to ruin. Its leg, a broken pillar, refused to bear its weight. I surveyed the vast, indifferent forest. Then my gaze returned to this fallen wonder. To leave it was a death sentence, a slow surrender to the wild's unpitying laws. And if another soul found it first? In that heartbeat, I forged a choice that would echo through the next 40 years of my life. "My barn," I said, the words heavy with destiny. "It's not far. I can offer you safe harbor there, but you must place your trust in me." Thus began our pilgrimage, a journey of 3 hours paved with my quiet words of encouragement and the sheer force of my will. I guided the creature on its painful sojourn back to my land. The pace was a torment, a crawl through the undergrowth, and I practically bore its entire weight for that final, grueling 100 yards. By the time we reached the shelter of my barn, we were 2 souls utterly spent. The old structure was weathered but strong, its loft and stalls having stood empty, silent witnesses to the passing years. It had become a crypt for my forgotten things, old furniture tools and lumber. I cleared the largest stall, a space reborn, and helped the creature inside, fashioning a bed of hay, a small comfort in a world of pain. "Stay here," I whispered, a promise and a command. "I'll bring food and water. You must remain a secret, a shadow in this place. No one can know you are here. Do you understand?" The creature looked at me, its eyes holding an ancient intelligence, and a soft sound escaped its throat. Then, impossibly, it gave a clear, deliberate nod of understanding that sent a shiver down my spine. "Good heavens," I breathed in awe. "You truly understand." For the remainder of that day and through the long night, I played the role of caregiver, bringing water, which it drank with a desperate gratitude. Food was a more complex puzzle. My offering of bread was gently refused, but the meat from my freezer was accepted with a primal hunger. I carefully changed its bandages, applying more antiseptic, a sentry standing guard against the specter of infection. I couldn't help but see it as a person watching my every move with what looked like profound curiosity. When I brought my camping lantern to chase the shadows from the barn, the creature reached out a tentative hand and touched the glass, mesmerized by the captured flame. "You've never seen our modern magics, have you?" I mused aloud. "You've lived a life unwritten out in the wild, a ghost among the trees, forever hidden from our world." It made a sound that hung in the air like a somber chord of agreement. Over the next few days, as I tended to its wound, a remarkable transformation began. We started to build a bridge of understanding, not with words, for its anatomy was not made for human speech, but with the universal language of gestures, sounds, and expressions. It swiftly learned to nod for affirmation and shake its head in dissent. It would point a long finger toward things it needed or desired, and it began to craft a language of its own. It spoke in a symphony of different vocalizations that I slowly learned to interpret: a sharp note for pain, a low rumble for hunger, a soft melody for gratitude. By the end of that first week, the invading infection was in retreat, and the leg was beginning to knit itself back together. The creature could now bear a sliver of weight on it, though true mobility was still weeks away on the horizon. And in that time, I had made another heavier decision. Even when it was whole again, I could not return it to the wild. Not yet. A voice in my heart whispered, perhaps not ever. This fear was cemented on August 18th, a mere 4 days after I had found it. Federal agents had materialized at my neighbor's property 3 miles down the road, asking pointed questions about unusual animal sightings, about impossibly large tracks in the soil, and strange calls that haunted the woods. Someone had glimpsed the sublime, reported the impossible, and now the government was investigating. I had heard such tales before. They were whispers on the wind stories of official men hunting for legends, rumors of unique beings captured and spirited away to hidden facilities erased from the world. I didn't know if the stories held any truth, but I couldn't risk my new companion's life to find out. So the creature, my secret, remained in my barn, and as days bled into weeks and weeks into months, the unexpected blossomed. We became friends. I named him Buddy, a simple name for a profound bond. Buddy seemed to accept it, responding with a turn of his great head whenever I spoke it. He was a male, a fact I'd confirmed while tending his injuries, and likely in his 20s, judging by the markers of his age that I could best surmise. Buddy's intelligence was a constant source of wonder. Within a month, he had mastered dozens of gestures for our silent conversations. He understood the grave importance of staying hidden, and never once did he break the daytime silence with a sound that might betray his existence. He learned the rhythms of my life and would wait with the patience of a mountain for me to bring his provisions. But he was also deeply lonely. I could see it in the profound sadness of his eyes, hear it in the mournful sounds he'd make late at night when he thought I was asleep. If this story is touching your heart, please hit that like button and consider sharing it. He yearned for his own kind, for the cathedral of the forest, for the sweet air of freedom. "I'm sorry," I told him one evening as summer gave way to autumn's chill. "I know this isn't fair, but if they find you, they'll see a monster, not a soul. They'll chain you in the cold, dark prose of a laboratory report. Perhaps worse. But here with me you are a verse in a poem of safety." Buddy looked at me, and in his eyes I saw deep pools of ancient sorrow and wisdom. Then a hand as large as a winter shovel, yet as gentle as a falling leaf, rested upon my shoulder. It was a touch that spoke volumes, a silent pact of understanding that said, "I hear you and I am grateful for this sanctuary." That was the autumn of 1984. Reagan was in the White House. A new kind of visual poetry flickered on MTV screens 24 hours a day, and the great wide world spun on, utterly oblivious that within a humble barn in Colorado, a man and a creature of myth were beginning an alliance, a friendship as unlikely as a star in daylight, one destined to span the turning of decades. By the time October painted the leaves in fire, Buddy's leg had mended enough for him to walk again, though he now carried a slight limp, a permanent postscript to his tale of survival. The barn door stood as an unwritten invitation to leave, never locked, yet he chose to remain. Perhaps it was the sanctity of the refuge I offered. Or maybe, in the hollow echo of his own solitude, he had found a kindred spirit in mine. Or perhaps he understood the truth of my vow, protection from a world that would only read his first page and judge the entire book. Whatever the reason, Buddy stayed, and I became the keeper of his story, guarding it with the silent turn of every day, every month, every year. Living with Buddy required a complete architectural revision of my life. The barn transformed from a simple structure to his castle, his sanctuary, and I spent months weaving comfort into its very walls for him. I fortified the walls against the coming winter's bite, installed a wood stove that would become the warm heart of his home, and sculpted a private world where his large form could roam forever, shielded from prying eyes. But the most formidable chapter in our shared story was sustenance. Buddy was a titan weighing perhaps 600 pounds, and his hunger was as vast as his frame. His palate was that of the wild earth itself, a carnivore and a forager thriving on meat fish berries, roots, and nuts. Simply marching into a grocery store and buying for two was a narrative that would surely raise questions I couldn't answer. So I became an artist of deception. My hunting trips grew more frequent, the story I spun for the townspeople being that I was selling venison to offset the cost of my newfound passion for the sport. A sprawling vegetable garden bloomed under my care, disguised as a simple hobby. My grocery runs became pilgrimages to distant towns, a careful rotation ensuring no single cashier would note the epic scale of my purchases. Each journey was a masterclass in logistics, a delicate ballet to avoid the spotlight of suspicion. And through it all, Buddy adapted to his new confined world with a grace that was truly remarkable. He was a creature of the moon, which was our saving grace. He would dream through the sunlit hours while I toiled and come alive in the velvet dark when the world slept and no eyes could witness his existence. I would spend my evenings in the quiet cathedral of the barn with him, and together we wove a tapestry of routines so familiar they felt almost domestic. He possessed a child's wonder for the artifacts of my world. I brought him books, and though the words were mysteries to him, he would plumb the depths of their pictures for hours on end. An old radio filled the barn with sound, and he became an avid listener. He was drawn to the symphony of the classics, the complex melodies a balm that seemed to soothe his wild, ancient soul. And when MTV began broadcasting its visual symphonies, I introduced a small television and a VCR into his world. Buddy would watch for hours, utterly mesmerized, a silent spectator to the strange, flickering pageant of humanity. You're probably the only one of your kind in all of history to witness Michael Jackson's Thriller video, I remarked to him one night in 1985, his eyes reflecting the dancing screen with pure wonder. He responded with a low rumble, a sound I had come to interpret as his form of laughter, a deep, earthy amusement. But our quiet life was a fragile poem, and there were times the world nearly tore the page, especially in those first years. In the blustering March of 1985, a storm of biblical fury tore a wound in the roof of our sanctuary. I had to hire a contractor, which meant that Buddy had to become a ghost within his own home. He was sequestered in the loft, entombed beneath a shroud of blankets and tarps for 3 long days as strangers hammered and shouted below. I never left his side. My own breath held tight, terrified that the slightest rustle would betray our secret. Just a little longer. I would whisper into the darkness of his hiding place, the sound of hammers, a relentless drumbeat overhead. Be the stone, be the shadow. And he was. Buddy possessed a stillness born of ancient forests, a discipline that was nothing short of miraculous. When the workers finally left and I pulled back the coverings, he was stiff and sore, but it made no sound that would have hinted at the magnificent secret hidden in the rafters. Then, in the scorched earth July of 1986, a new beast arrived, a forest fire that raged within 2 miles of my property. The authorities issued their decrees of evacuation, their knocks on my door a summons to safety. I played the part of the compliant citizen only to slip back under the cover of dusk back to Buddy. I will not abandon you, I vowed, my voice thick against the choking smoke as ash like a gray and mournful snow descended upon us. If this sanctuary turns to inferno, then we shall face the flames as one. He looked at me, his gaze a complex tapestry of gratitude woven with a deep primal concern for my own life. He pressed his great hand to his heart, then gestured to me, and then to the burning forest beyond. He was telling me to save myself, that I didn't have to stay. "Oh, but I do," I replied. "You're my responsibility now, my friend, and that is a bond that fire cannot break." As if hearing our pledge, the winds of fate shifted that night, turning the fire's hungry march away, sparing us by less than a single mile. When the evacuation order lifted, I told everyone I had taken refuge with friends in Boulder. And so the world spun on unquestioning. The years flowed like a river, and Buddy and I settled into a quiet rhythm, a silent understanding that bound our 2 disparate lives. I became a student of his existence, learning more about his kind than perhaps any human ever had. His strength was a thing of the earth itself, a primal force. I once watched him lift a 300-pound timber beam with a single, effortless hand. He was a paradox of mass and grace, nimble, despite his size, able to ascend to the barn's high rafters in seconds. His senses were a finely tuned instrument far beyond my own crude perceptions. He could hear my truck's familiar rumble from a mile down the road. He could smell a stranger approaching our land long before they were a whisper on the wind. For him, the blackest night was as clear as day. He moved through the absolute darkness of the barn with an easy, silent grace. But beyond these physical wonders was the true marvel, the deep, complex country of his heart. He knew joy, sadness, loneliness, fear, and a profound affection. He even possessed a winking sense of humor. He would sometimes hide my tools as a game and then let out that low, rumbling sound of amusement when I searched for them in vain. He was a being of playfulness, gentleness, and deep thought. In 1987, I undertook a secret expansion of our world. To the townspeople, I was just building a large storage shed, a simple, rustic addition. But in reality, I was carving a hidden artery from the earth, a tunnel that would connect the barn to a secluded, fenced sanctuary in the forest where Buddy could feel the night air on his skin. It was 20 feet of underground passage, fortified with timber and concrete, that opened into a quarter-acre haven encircled by a 12-foot-tall fence masterfully camouflaged to appear as nothing more than the wild woods. It took me 6 months of labor under the cover of twilight, but when I was done, Buddy could finally stand under the open sky for the first time in 3 long years. That first night he stepped out, he just stood beneath the diamond-scattered sky for a full hour, his gaze lost in the cosmos. I watched him from the mouth of the tunnel, and I swear I saw the glint of tears in his eyes. If you've ever felt a moment that powerful, do me a favor and hit the like button. I know it's not real freedom. I murmured, my voice a whisper on the night air, but it's a piece of it. He made a soft sound in his throat and placed his great hand over his heart, a silent thank you that echoed louder than any word. By 1989, we had built a new bridge of communication. I'd crafted flashcards with simple images and words, our own private lexicon. I was teaching him to connect symbols to meaning, and he learned to point to the cards, weaving together thoughts far more complex than I had imagined. He even learned numbers. He came to understand time. I could show him the face of a clock to explain when I'd return, and he even mastered the rhythm of the week. "You're smarter than most people I know," I said to him one evening after he'd perfectly arranged a sequence of cards. "If the world ever knew what you truly are, what you are capable of." But that was the very reason the world had to remain in the dark. The world kept pressing at our borders. In 1991, a hiker lost and adrift stumbled onto my property. I found him near the barn, his body succumbing to exhaustion and thirst. I gave him water and set him on the path back to the main trail, all while Buddy remained a ghost of silence inside a mere 20 feet from the unsuspecting stranger. Then, in 1993, progress began its relentless march. Property values in the area began to climb, and developers with their blueprints and bottom lines started buying up the land. A real estate agent paid me a visit asking if I'd consider selling. She walked the property, her gaze assessing every acre, wandering far too close to the barn for my peace of mind. "That's a lovely barn," she commented. "Good bones. A buyer could transform it into a guest house or a studio." "It is not for sale," I said, my voice as firm as the old wood itself. "This land stays in the family." "Everything's for sale for the right price, Mr. Jason." "Not this," I replied. "Not now, not ever." She departed, her ambition thwarted, but she returned 2 more times in the months that followed, each offer more generous, more tempting than the last. "Let me know in the comments what in your life is absolutely not for sale." Each time I refused. Buddy was more precious than any fortune. As the 1990s drew on, the future began to cast a long shadow over my thoughts. I was in my late 30s, strong and able, but I knew I was not immortal. What would happen to Buddy when I grew old? When I was gone, he had been a resident of that barn for almost a decade. He had forgotten the harsh lessons of the wild. He was dependent on me completely and utterly. I began to prepare, setting aside money, drafting plans for a future without me. I started buying the surrounding land whenever it became available. another 40 acres in 1994, then 60 more in 1996. By 1998, I owned 140 acres of forest. I was building a fortress of solitude, a wider buffer between Buddy and the encroaching world. I also began to fill journals documenting everything: how to care for him, his specific diet, his health needs. Arthritis had settled into the leg that had been trapped so long ago, a constant, painful memory. I wrote down his preferences, his routines. If something were to happen to me, whoever found these books would have a testament, a guide to his care. It was as if Buddy sensed my worries. One evening in 1999, 15 years to the day I found him, he did something that stopped my heart. Using his picture cards, he laid out a sequence for me to see. It was a picture of me, a picture of him, a picture of our home, the barn, and then a picture of a heart. You and me, home love. A silent poem of belonging I deciphered from his gestures. This is our sanctuary. We are a family. He nodded with a fierce conviction, then pointed to me, tracing a gesture I had come to know as a lexicon of the heart. His hand pressed over his heart, a solemn oath of the soul, then extended toward me as silent language for gratitude for a bond that transcended words. "Yeah, Buddy," I managed my voice, catching on the ragged edge of emotion. "We're family. You're bound to me for the long journey ahead." As the year 2000 loomed a specter on the calendar, the world obsessed over a phantom of failing code, the Y2K bug. But my fears were of a more ancient flesh and blood variety. Buddy was entering the autumn of his years, perhaps around 40 by my reckoning. I myself was 42. We had woven nearly half our lives into the shared tapestry of this secret existence. We were hidden from the world architects of our own small universe within the weathered planks of that barn and the whispering woods beyond. I had laid the life I might have known upon the altar of this promise: no wife, no children, no friendships forged in the casual light of day. To guard Buddy's secret was to live in a state of self-imposed exile, keeping the rest of humanity at a soul's length. My entire existence had become a constellation with a single unwavering star. His protection, his provision, his sanctuary from a world that would never understand. Yet watching him that New Year's Eve, a portrait of profound serenity in the lamp-lit barn, listening as the strains of a symphony ushered in the year 2000, I felt a certainty that quieted all doubt. I had made the right choice. The world in its ignorance would have seen a monster, a myth, a curiosity to be caged and studied. But I saw him as he was, a soul utterly different from me, yet a soul nonetheless. A thinking, feeling being who deserved the simple dignities of safety and kindness. And I would be his guardian, his shield, no matter the cost, for all the days of my life. If this story is touching your heart, please hit that like button, and let us know in the comments what you think it truly means to be a person. The 2000s dawned, and with the new century came challenges I could never have foreseen. Technology, a relentless tide, was advancing, and with each new wave it threatened to erode the shores of Buddy's secret world. The eyes in the sky grew sharper, more numerous. Satellite imagery became a common marvel. Then, in 2005, Google Earth launched, and suddenly our fortress was laid bare to any curious soul with an internet connection. A cold paranoia sharp as winter frost became my constant companion. I began to see our world through the lens of a satellite, and I worked tirelessly building new roof structures over the outdoor enclosure, weaving them into the landscape until they appeared as nothing more than a natural canopy of leaves. I planted fast-growing trees, silent green sentinels to stand guard against prying eyes. I even descended into the rabbit hole of thermal imaging, haunted by the thought that Buddy's own warmth, the very signature of his life, could betray him. "The world is shrinking, Buddy," I told him one evening in 2006, the words heavy in the air. "The spaces for secrets are vanishing. Everyone carries a camera in their pocket now, a map of the world, a connection to everything. We have to be ghosts more careful than ever before." Buddy, now in his 60s by my measure, nodded with a slow, deliberate gravity. The wisdom of his years was in his eyes. He understood completely. The frost of age was now silvering the hair around his face and shoulders, and his movements had lost their youthful fluidity, growing stiffer than they were 20 years prior. An old pain in his leg, a ghost of that long-ago injury, now troubled him, more a biting complaint in the cold weather. I was 48 then, and my own body was keeping a tally of the years. The endless carpentry, the lifting, and the building had etched their story onto my back and knees. A new fear began to haunt my quiet moments. What would happen when my own strength failed? When I could no longer care for Buddy? When the rungs of a ladder felt like a precipice and carrying his provisions became an impossible task? So, in 2007, I made a decision that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, terrifying yet necessary. I had to break my solitary vigil. I needed help, but it could not be from the world of strangers. I reached out to my nephew, Jason. He was just 23, working as a park ranger up in Montana. Jason was always a good soul, responsible, trustworthy, a young man who held a deep and quiet respect for nature and the sanctity of privacy. More than that, he was blood. He was family. If this sacred trust could be passed to anyone, it had to be him. I invited him to visit for a week that August in the year 2007. On the third day of his visit, after we'd rekindled our bond and I had taken the measure of his character one last time, I decided to take the leap of faith. "Jason, there's something I need to show you." I began, my voice low and serious. "But first, a promise. What you are about to see, you can never speak of. Not to your parents, not to your girlfriend, not to a single soul you work with. If you cannot give me your absolute word, this conversation ends now." Jason's expression was a mixture of concern and deep curiosity. "Uncle Michael," he asked, "are you in some kind of trouble? Is this illegal?" he pressed. "Not in the way you mean, no. But if the world were to find out, they would take away something precious to me. Not a thing, a person, someone." With his promise secured, I led him toward the barn. Buddy was in his outdoor sanctuary, a place I reached through the hidden tunnel. I had told Buddy that morning that a new friend was coming, someone I trusted, and that he must meet this moment with calm and without fear. What do you think Jason's reaction will be? Drop your predictions in the comments. The moment Jason's eyes fell upon Buddy standing beneath the ancient pines, his mind simply could not process it. He stumbled backward, scrambling away in pure, unadulterated shock. "What in God's name," he stammered. That's a Bigfoot." "His name is Buddy," I said, my voice a calm anchor in his sea of disbelief. "And he has been my friend and my charge here since 1984. 23 years, Jason. I found him caught in a trap at the edge of death. I've been protecting him ever since." Jason was speechless, a statue of astonishment. He just stared, his mouth agape, as Buddy watched him in return with cautious, intelligent eyes. "He is intelligent, Jason," I continued softly. "As intelligent as you or I, and perhaps wiser in ways we've forgotten. He understands our language, and he speaks his own through gestures and the images he draws. His is a gentle soul, a quiet kindness, and he is my dearest friend. But right now his heart beats like a trapped bird because a stranger is in his home, so I need you to find your calm." It took David a full hour for the storm of disbelief to pass. He unleashed a torrent of 100 questions, each of which I met with the patient calm of a storyteller. Finally, his eyes wide with a wonder I hadn't seen since he was a child met mine with something akin to reverence. "Uncle Michael, do you grasp the magnitude of this? This is not just a discovery. It's like finding a living, breathing page torn from the book of myths. This is the single most important zoological find in all of recorded history. The world of science. They would cage him in an instant. They would study him under cold glass, a specimen pinned to a board. They'd make him a spectacle, a hollow fame that would steal the very breath of dignity and the last echoes of his freedom." "I know," I cut in, my voice sharp. "I know exactly what the world would do, David. And that is precisely why this secret must remain buried, a truth known only to us. There are no buts here. Buddy is a person, not a curiosity. He possesses a soul rights that exist beyond the cold ink of human law. He feels joy and sorrow, has tastes and aversions, knows the chill of fear. He has earned the right to live his days in quiet peace, not as an exhibit in a concrete jungle or a subject in a sterile lab." David spent the rest of that week not observing a creature but getting to know a soul named Buddy. By week's end, the why of my silence had settled into his heart. He gave me his solemn vow to help to be the guardian in my stead, to take up the mantle of Buddy's care should my time come. "Thank you." I said the words heavy with meaning as he departed. You've just shouldered the weight of the world's most profound secret." His reply was firm. "I won't let you down, Uncle Michael, and I won't let Buddy down." Having David know was like a deep exhale I hadn't realized I was holding yet. It also sowed a new field of anxiety. But as the seasons turned and the years unspooled, he remained a man of his word. His secret was safe. His visits a steady rhythm in our lives, helping with tasks that grew heavier with time. I knew in my bones I had made the right choice. In the year 2008, I crossed the threshold into my 50th year, and Buddy, by my best guess, was nearing 65. The current of time was pulling us both a little slower, yet the riverbanks of our routine held firm. Buddy still had his nightly walk under the stars, his meals, his strange love for music, and the flickering screen of the television. I'd even upgraded to a DVD player, and he had curated a small library of favorite films. He was most captivated by the nature documentaries his eyes fixed on the screen. It was a bittersweet thing to watch. I believe he was gazing into a lost kingdom, a world he once called home. But that year, the calm waters of our life were shattered by an unforeseen storm. It was October of 2008, and during one of his regular visits, David's sharp eyes caught something I had missed, a discordant note in the way Buddy moved. "Uncle Michael, something is terribly wrong." David's voice was low and urgent. "Just look at his breathing." And I saw it. Buddy was laboring each breath, a painful rasp, a desperate fight for air. A strange pallor had crept over him, and his eyes held a fog of disorientation. I'd nursed him through common sickness before, the simple ailments of the changing seasons, but this was a darkness of a different kind. I think it's his heart." I whispered the words, catching in a throat tight with panic. My own heart was pounding. If you've ever felt that kind of helplessness for someone you love, please hit that like button. Or perhaps pneumonia. David mused, his mind racing. David, what can I possibly do? A veterinarian is impossible. A human doctor, unthinkable. I had the basics, the simple tools for scrapes and bruises, but nothing for a life hanging by a thread. In that moment, David became the anchor in my storm. "I know someone," he declared, his resolve cutting through my fear. "A veterinarian, a friend. She works with large animals, and more importantly, she's discreet and knows how to keep her counsel. Let me make the call." "David, you can't," I protested, but he met my gaze. "Uncle Michael, if we do nothing, Buddy could slip away from us. You have to trust me." And so Dr. Maria Garcia arrived the following morning. She arrived believing she was on a house call for a large, exotic primate something. An eccentric old uncle of a ranger friend was keeping off the books. David had painted a masterpiece of deliberate vagueness. The moment her eyes fell upon Buddy, all the air left the room. She stood frozen, a statue of disbelief for what felt like an eternity. "That's not possible," she breathed. "It's as possible as the ground beneath your feet," I replied, my voice raw. "And he is dying. I beg you, can you help him?" Maria, to her immense credit, shook off the impossible and let the healer within take over. She approached and began her examination of Buddy, who was too lost in his fevered struggle to be frightened by another new face in his life. Her diagnosis came swiftly: pneumonia. A severe case, a raging fire in his lungs, but one she believed could be extinguished if we moved without delay. "He needs a heavy course of antibiotics, respiratory support, and constant monitoring," she stated, her focus absolute. "I can do this." Then her clinical gaze lifted, meeting mine and David's. "This is real," she said, the statement hanging in the air. "For 24 years you've been sheltering a living myth." "Yes," I confirmed. "And if you tell anyone, they will tear him from this home and it will destroy him." "Please," I implored. Maria considered this the weight of a world-changing secret settling upon her. Then she gave a single decisive nod. "I'll help, but in return, you two owe me the entire story." What an incredible moment of compassion. If you think Dr. Garcia is a hero, share this story with someone who appreciates true courage. For 2 long weeks, she was our lifeline. She came every day, a quiet presence with bags of medications and modern equipment. Buddy's terrible fever finally broke on the 5th day, and by the 10th, the tortured rasp in his chest had softened into the gentle rhythm of normal breathing. Maria refused any form of payment, claiming that the experience itself was a treasure beyond price. "He's a marvel of biology," she told me one evening. "Physiologically, he's a cousin to the great apes, yet he's a masterpiece of unique adaptations. His lung capacity is simply extraordinary, like twin forges built to weather any storm. It's likely the very reason he survived an illness that would have claimed a human life. And Michael," she added softly, "his trust in you is absolute. The bond you share. It's a language I've never witnessed between a human and any living being." "He's not an animal," I corrected, the words gentle but firm. "He's a person. A different kind of person, but a person nonetheless." Maria nodded, a slow, profound understanding dawning in her eyes. "Yes," she said, "I see that now." And just like that, she became the third point in our small constellation of trust. 3 souls in the entire world who knew the truth of Buddy. And all 3 of us were bound by an unspoken oath to protect him. The 2010s rolled in, bringing with them the inevitable tides of change. I turned 60 in 2018, a senior citizen by the calendar, though my spirit felt ages older. The years had carved their story into my bones. My back was a constant ache, my knees a testament to a life lived hard, and a minor heart attack in 2015 had served as a stark memento mori of fright I wouldn't soon forget. Buddy was well into his 70s now, his movements a slow ballet, his days a tapestry of sleep and waning appetite. We were 2 old souls on a shared path, and I felt the shadow of our final chapter drawing ever closer. David's visits became more frequent, and in 2016, upon their marriage, he brought his wife Jennifer into our sacred circle, sharing the secret we had guarded for so long. Jennifer, a biologist by trade, was understandably overwhelmed, yet she adapted with a grace that was truly remarkable. She joined Maria in monitoring Buddy's health, her scientific mind documenting every detail with meticulous precision. "Uncle Michael, you've chronicled over 30 years of this life," Jennifer remarked, her eyes wide as she pored over my journals. "This is an invaluable archive, a treasure trove of data on a species unknown to science. And even if Buddy is the last verse of his kind's song, this information will never see the light of publication," I stated, my voice unyielding. "Not while he draws breath, not while it could betray his sanctuary. When our stories have both concluded, then you may decide its fate, but not a moment sooner." "I understand," she replied, her tone filled with respect. "But Michael," she pressed gently, "what if he's not the final echo? What if others of his kind are out there and your knowledge of his care, his needs, could be their salvation? It's a heavy question, isn't it? Let me know in the comments what you would do in this situation." It was a question that had haunted my thoughts 1,000 times over. Could there be others like Buddy hidden away in the deep untamed heart of the wilderness? Their existence a silent struggle for survival. And if they existed, could my knowledge be their lifeline? The risk, however, was a chasm too wide to cross. To reveal what I knew would be to reveal Buddy himself. And 40 years ago, I had made a solemn vow to be his guardian. As the pages of the calendar turned to 2019, the twilight of Buddy's life began to descend more noticeably. His great strength ebbed, his movements became labored, and his world slowly shrank to the quiet realm of sleep. Maria examined him, and her gentle words confirmed the truth I already felt in my soul. "He's passing Michael, not in a rush, but his body's great machinery is slowly, gracefully winding down. It's the simple, unalterable truth of old age. He may have a few more seasons, but he has entered the final chapter." That evening I sat with Buddy, my hand resting on his vast shoulder, 2 weary travelers at the edge of the final horizon. "You've lived a good full life, my friend," I whispered to him. "A life of safety, of comfort, of being deeply loved. That's a richer tapestry than many humans ever get to weave. I just hope you hold no regrets for spending all these years here with me." In response, Buddy placed his immense hand over mine, then pointed first to me, then to himself, and finally to the simple heart symbol he'd drawn on a card so many decades before. No regrets. This is family. This is love." "Yeah," I choked out, my vision blurred by tears. "Me, too, old friend. Me, too. Buddy lingered, defying Maria's predictions throughout the long year of 2020 and into 2021. While the world outside grappled with the great storm of a pandemic, Buddy and I navigated our own quiet tempest of aging and mortality. The profound isolation that descended upon humanity was a climate we had long since learned to inhabit. By then, we had been a world unto ourselves for 36 years, and in a strange twist of fate, the global crisis offered us a small measure of peace. With humanity in retreat and fewer wanderers in the wilderness, the risk of discovery dwindled. It was then that David and Jennifer moved into the old house on another part of my land. The official reason was to help me through the lockdown, but their true purpose was to lend their hands and hearts to Buddy's daily care. Buddy's world, once a sprawling wilderness, had now contracted to the four walls of the barn. The strength to journey through the tunnel to his outdoor sanctuary had left him. The cruel grip of arthritis was relentless, and he now spent his days upon a specially crafted bed we had built for him, a great padded platform engineered to bear his immense weight and grant him what comfort we could. And yet the light of his mind remained undimmed. He still found solace in his music and watched the grand theater of nature unfold on the television we'd mounted in his line of sight. He continued to speak to us in his silent language of gestures and picture cards, each movement now slower weighed with intention. In June of 2021, I turned 63. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe. It truly helps us continue to share these tales. By my estimation, Buddy was somewhere around 78 or 79 years old. We had shared 37 years together, more than half of my life and a significant portion of his. Do you remember the day we met? I asked him one quiet evening seated by his bedside. You were caught in a cruel trap, your life fading, and I was just a man who couldn't turn his back on a suffering creature. I never imagined this path for us. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we'd share nearly 4 decades. Buddy made a soft rumbling sound and lifted a tired hand, pointing to a card that depicted 2 figures standing together side by side. Then he pointed to me and back to himself before placing his hand over the great expanse of his chest. Brothers, I breathed, the understanding dawning on me. Yes, we became brothers, didn't we? He nodded slowly. His ancient eyes, still burning with a keen intelligence that defied his failing body, shone with an emotion I could only name as love. Then, in September of 2021, Buddy's appetite began to fade for good. Maria came to see him finding no specific ailment, only the inevitable gentle shutdown of a long and storied life. She increased his pain medication, ensuring his final days would be a passage of peace. What a journey it has been. Share this video with someone who would appreciate this incredible bond. It might be days, or it could be weeks. Sarah Williams confided in me, her voice a somber whisper. But Michael, you must steel your heart for what is to come and contemplate the chapter that follows. After, the word hung in the air, a chilling echo. My mind had refused to venture into that desolate future. Buddy's body, we couldn't consign him to the earth like a cherished pet, his story untold. He is monumental, Michael. Think of what he represents, the living proof you've chronicled for decades. The scientific community, nay, the entire world, deserves to know such a soul walked this earth. But my own words haunted me. I promised him secrecy. You promised him sanctuary in life. Sarah countered gently, pausing to let the weight of her words settle. After he's gone, the nature of that vow must transform. My heart recoiled from the thought, yet a stark truth resonated in her logic. Buddy's passing would unleash a torrent of questions I had long held at bay. What would become of his mortal vessel? How could we compose a fitting eulogy for his life while still honoring the sacred silence we had maintained? Jason offered a different current in this river of grief. Uncle Michael, he began, for nearly 40 years you have been Buddy's guardian, a testament to profound love and unwavering protection. But when he's no longer with us, doesn't the world deserve to know that beings like him walked among the pines, that one of them bestowed upon a human the ultimate trust, the gift of his entire existence? The faceless bureaucracy will descend, I countered, my voice heavy. They'll claim him, seize my journals, and bury it all under a seal of secrecy. His memory will be entombed in some forgotten, dusty vault. Not if we are the authors of this final chapter, Jennifer suggested, her eyes bright with a sudden fire. What if we become his scribes and historians first? A testament of photographs, moving pictures, and the very code of his life in DNA samples. What if we release a flood of truth the moment he passes a story so vast and immediate that no government agency could ever hope to dam it up? That path is fraught with peril, Sarah cautioned. Michael could face the full, unyielding weight of the law, accused of harboring a species they'll rush to classify. He could forfeit his home, his life's work, everything. I am 63 years old. I stated the decision solidifying in my soul. My own autumn has come. If giving voice to Buddy's story demands my freedom, or this land, then perhaps that is a coin I am willing to spend. He deserves a legacy etched in truth, not whispered as a myth. And so we spent the fall of 2021 in solemn preparation. Jennifer became his portraitist, capturing hundreds of images of Buddy, immortalizing his noble form, his very essence. She documented his quiet kingdom within the barn, his unique lexicon of picture cards, every facet of his world. Jason, meanwhile, became his biographer in motion, recording videos of Buddy's silent conversations, the spark of intellect and deep personality shining through. Sarah, our scientist, carefully collected the threads of his being, blood and hair samples destined for a trusted private laboratory. For my part, I became the archivist, organizing my countless journals. A chronicle spanning 37 years detailing every aspect of Buddy's life, his habits, his diet, his health, his joys and sorrows. It was without a doubt the most comprehensive testament to a Sasquatch's existence ever assembled. Through it all, Buddy seemed to comprehend the gravity of our task. There was a quiet knowing in his ancient eyes as he cooperated patiently, sitting for the photographs and videos, sometimes even striking what seemed a deliberate pose. On days when his strength allowed, he would engage with Jason, his large finger pointing to the picture cards, weaving answers to unspoken questions. "Why do you suppose he's so willing?" Jason asked me one afternoon. "After a lifetime cloaked in shadow, why step into this strange new light?" I sighed, the truth of it heavy in my chest. Because he knows his time is short, and perhaps in the deepest part of his soul he wishes not to fade into oblivion. Perhaps he wants to be a single, undeniable voice for a silent species, even if he is the only testament we have. Then, on December 3rd, 2021, the tide turned irrevocably. Buddy's health began to fail with breathtaking speed. We gathered in the barn, a solemn vigil around him, myself, Jason, Jennifer, and Sarah. Buddy's breaths were shallow, each one a painful mountain to climb, his discomfort clear despite our efforts. "Is he in pain?" I whispered to Sarah. "Yes," she confirmed, her voice thick with sorrow. "His lungs are giving out. The light is fading." I moved to Buddy's side, taking his immense, gentle hand in both of my own. "It's all right, old friend," I murmured, my voice breaking. "You can rest now. Your battle is over. You lived a life of peace. You were loved. You were safe. That is a finer epitaph than most receive." Buddy's gaze found mine, a flicker of the old fire in their depths. His fingers tightened around my hand with a ghost of their former strength, and then he did something unprecedented. A sound rumbled from deep within his chest, a sound shaped into something akin to words. His physiology was never meant for human speech. The sounds were rough, imperfect, yet the meaning was as clear as a mountain stream. "Michael, thank you. 37 years. A lifetime of silent understanding of gestures and pictures. And with his last breath, he gifted me my name. You are so welcome." I choked out tears, blurring his beloved face. "Thank you for the gift of your trust. Thank you for the honor of your friendship. Thank you for 40 years of a companionship that defined my life. I love you, Buddy." He offered one last soft exhalation, a final gentle pressure on my hand, and then the great heart stilled. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by my own ragged sobs and Jennifer's quiet weeping. Buddy was gone. We kept a vigil with his memory for hours, anchored by our shared grief, none of us willing to break the spell. Finally, as the first gray fingers of dawn touched the sky on December 4th, 2021, we began the difficult work we had prepared for. Sarah moved with the solemn purpose of a scientist performing a final respectful examination and collecting tissue samples for posterity. Jennifer and Jason took the last photographs and measurements, their work a final, quiet tribute. I inscribed the final somber entry in my journal on December 4th, 2021. Buddy, my friend, my shadow, my secret passed from this world as peacefully as a falling leaf at approximately 3:47 in the morning. His family, the one we had built, was by his side. He was a venerable 78 or 79 years of age and had shared my life's journey for 37 years, 3 months, and 20 days. A light has gone out in the world, something truly irreplaceable. We honored his body, preserving it in a refrigerated sanctum we had long prepared, maintaining a constant, silent vigil of temperature as we orchestrated our next chapter. As per our solemn pact, we would reveal his truth to the world in carefully considered stages. First, like casting a stone into a still pond, Jason and Jennifer released their documentation online, a cascade of photographs, videos, and meticulous scientific analysis. They used a multitude of channels at once, a strategic flood to prevent any single dam from suppressing the truth. Packages containing our testament were sent to the great forums of our time, major news outlets, scientific journals, and the dedicated cryptozoology organizations. Second, Maria Garcia submitted her genetic analysis to a peer-reviewed journal, a scholarly whisper of the thunder to come. It was published under her name, detailing samples from an unidentified North American hominid, a breadcrumb trail that deliberately concealed the full, staggering story. What do you think of this careful step-by-step reveal? Let me know your strategic thoughts in the comments below. Third, I prepared to give my own account to narrate the epic of Buddy's life and the 4 decades I had served as his solitary guardian. We launched this great vessel of truth on December 15, 2021, precisely 11 days after Buddy's quiet departure. The response was not a ripple. It was a tidal wave, instantaneous and overwhelming. Within hours, my secluded property became a stage surrounded by the glaring lights of news vans, the clamor of reporters, and the stoic presence of government vehicles. My telephone, once a quiet companion, shrieked with the world's curiosity until I had no choice but to sever its connection. The internet itself became a great digital bonfire ablaze with debate. Was this truth a grand deception? The find of the Century federal agents descended on December 16th, their authority a palpable force demanding access to Buddy's remains and every page of our chronicle. I welcomed them in unveiling the life we had hidden. The senior agent, a steely-eyed woman named Patricia Williams, observed Buddy's silent form for a long time before her words cut through the silence. "Mr. Michael, are you fully aware of the legal labyrinth you've entered? Harboring an undocumented species, obstructing scientific inquiry, withholding critical information from federal authorities," she listed each charge a heavy stone. "I understand that I protected a living, intelligent soul from becoming a specimen in a cage," I interrupted, my voice unwavering. "I offered him a life of peace and dignity. If that is a crime, then by all means charge me." Patricia Williams studied my face for a long moment. If you stand with Michael's decision, hit that like button to show your support. "Mr. Michael, whispers of these creatures have haunted the wilderness for decades. Vague reports, fleeting sightings, rumors of official knowledge. What you've done here is provide the undeniable physical proof. This body, your detailed journals, the genetic evidence, it's all real, and it is going to rewrite our world." "Good," I said the word, carrying the weight of 40 years. "It should. Buddy deserves to be known. His species deserves not just recognition, but our solemn protection. If there are others walking in the deep woods, perhaps now we can offer them a sanctuary instead of forcing them deeper into the shadows. You may have just triggered the most profound cryptozoological and anthropological crisis in history." Agent Williams stated, her tone a stark warning. "I hope you're prepared for the fallout." "I've had 4 decades to prepare," I replied. "I am ready." The months that followed that revelation were a whirlwind, a perfect storm of human reaction. My property became a permanent camp for the media, the scientists, the government officials, and the protesters, all passionately arguing the fate of Buddy's remains. I gave dozens of interviews sharing my journals revealing the barn that was his home and explaining the unique language we had forged over 40 years. The DNA analysis confirmed the story our hearts already knew. Buddy was indeed a previously unknown hominid species, a living bridge genetically positioned between modern humans and our ancient, extinct relatives like the Neanderthals. The scientific community was torn asunder, divided between those awestruck by the discovery and those who found it impossible that such a truth could remain hidden for so long. Share this story if you believe some wonders can still exist hidden from the modern world. In January of 2022, the federal government officially classified Buddy's species as critically endangered, a ghost that may already be gone, and created a task force to ask the great question: were there others? They offered me full immunity from prosecution, a pardon for my years of secrecy in exchange for my complete cooperation and consultation on any future conservation efforts. They want you to help them find more, Jason said, the irony thick in his voice as he read the legal documents. After 40 years of hiding, Buddy, they want you to become the hunter. If others are out there, I said, my purpose clear, they deserve real protection, not just to be monitored from the shadows. Buddy lived his life in hiding because he was terrified of what we might do. Maybe now we can create a world where his kind don't have to live in the grip of that fear. But the government, I would soon learn, had a far deeper revelation waiting for me. In the chill of February 2022, Agent Williams returned carrying classified documents that held a secret kept for decades. Mr. Michael, what I am about to tell you is that the government has been aware of these populations since the 1960s. We've been orchestrating a silent watch over them, a covert guardianship of their sylvan homes, and maintaining a strict quarantine on information to prevent this very storm, the tempest your revelation has unleashed. My gaze locked with hers. You've known all this time while I was living a life of shadows, hiding, Buddy, haunted by the fear you'd steal him away. You already possessed this truth, that these beings walk the earth. We knew of their existence in the untamed wilds, she countered. We had no inkling that one had found sanctuary on private land for 4 decades. Mr. Michael, the veil of secrecy was not woven to deny their being, but to shield them from the glint in a hunter's eye, the greed of a trophy seeker, and the cold ambition of overzealous science. Your confession, born of love, has inadvertently painted a target on every one of their kind. Then give them a public shield, I urged, my voice rising. Carve their homelands into legally protected sanctuaries. Let the law become their guardian with harsh penalties for any who would do them harm. Cease this charade of ignorance and truly act. It is not so simple. Oh, but it is. You've cloistered the truth to smooth your own path, not to protect these souls. Buddy lived for 40 years within the confines of a barn, a prisoner of fear because he was too terrified to claim his freedom. That is not protection. That is merely a cage with wider bars. The Great Debate, a modern-day epic, unfolded through the year 2022 and into 2023. Environmental groups championed their cause for official Endangered Species Act protection. Meanwhile, hunting organizations debated the very nature of the beast. If Bigfoot was merely an animal, should it be considered legal game? It's a complex question, folks. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Ethicists penned new verses on the old song of personhood, questioning if a species so like our own should be granted the same legal standing. Buddy's body remained in federal hands, a silent testament studied by a legion of research teams. They confirmed the story my journals told, the depth of his intelligence, his elegant physical adaptations, his profound capacity for emotion, and the silent language we shared. Some scientists proposed a final stage for him at the Smithsonian, a monument to a species that walked in shadows. Others, with a whisper of reverence, argued his remains should be returned to the wild interred, in the forest from which he was plucked 4 decades before. I fought for this final homecoming with every fiber of my being. Buddy lived his entire adult life as a phantom to avoid becoming a spectacle. You will not turn his memory into one now that he is gone. In August of 2023, a quiet accord was reached. Buddy's earthly form would be given to the fire, and his ashes would drift through the pines of the Rocky Mountains near the place I first saw him. A small portion of tissue, a mere whisper of his being, would be preserved for the inquiries of future genetics. My journals, the chronicle of our shared life, would find a home in the archives of the Smithsonian, a resource for scholars, but never sensationalized for the curious masses. The final rite was held on September 1, 2023, exactly 39 years and 18 days after that fateful afternoon I found Buddy ensnared in that clearing. David, Jennifer, Lisa, Garcia, and I, along with a solemn procession of scientists and officials touched by his story, made the pilgrimage to that sacred ground. I cradled Buddy's ashes in a simple wooden box crafted in my own workshop, one final piece of carpentry, a last handmade gift for my oldest friend. When we arrived at the very spot, I lifted the lid and let his ashes dance upon the wind to settle amongst the trees that were his first and final home. Buddy was more than a specimen for a lab, I said to the small assembly of witnesses. He was a person, a soul bound in a different form. He had tastes, feelings, and a long, deep memory. He found solace in classical music and wonder in nature documentaries. He possessed a quiet sense of humor. He knew grief. He knew laughter. He felt the sting of fear, the warmth of joy, the solace of affection. For 40 years he was my universe and I was his. He gave me his trust when humanity had given him no reason to. He chose to stay when the wild called to him. He offered me a companionship that filled the empty spaces of my life and gave me a profound purpose. In return, I gave him what little I could, safety and dignity. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button to honor his memory. That is the legacy I want the world to remember. And not merely that Bigfoot is real, but that these beings are worthy of our reverence, our protection, and our boundless compassion. I let the last of the ashes fly. Rest now, old friend. You're home. The echoes of Buddy's revelation continued to ripple through 2023 and into 2024, a story that refused to be forgotten. Several credible sightings were reported and carefully investigated, though no other of his kind were ever confirmed or captured. Laws were etched into the books of several states, creating vast wilderness preserves. Great silent sanctuaries, where these creatures might continue their existence undisturbed by the modern world. In March of 2024, I turned 66 years old. Buddy had been a memory for 2 years and 3 months. The barn, his world for so long, still stood, but now it was a hollow cathedral of silence. I had removed every trace of him. The bed we built together, the television and DVD player, the simple picture cards that formed our unique language. It was all archived, now documented, and preserved evidence of a 40-year experiment in a friendship that crossed the boundary of species. I consented to my final major interview in April of 2024, seated on the porch of my home, my gaze fixed on the forest that had been both Buddy's prison and his sanctuary. Share this video if you believe stories like this need to be heard, and subscribe for more journeys into the heart of the unknown. Do you carry any regret? The reporter's voice probed gently. 40 years of your life, a long testament to hiding and protecting Buddy. You never married, never raised a family, never knew what one might call a normal life. Do you regret that path not taken? I pondered this for a long moment like a verse from a forgotten poem. My only regret is that he needed to be hidden at all. I regret that the world was too small, too fearful for him to live freely. I regret that his cathedral was a barn when these wild forests were his rightful sanctuary. But do I regret the bond we shared, the watch I kept, the love I felt never, not for a single breath? She then asked, what do you hope Buddy's legacy will be? I hope people will come to understand that this world is a book with pages yet unread, that there are mysteries whispering in the wild places, and they deserve our guardianship, not our greed. And I hope that if others like Buddy are out there, they are met with the respect and dignity he was so deserving of, but which he found only with me. What would you say to Buddy if you could speak to him one more time? My eyes traveled to the forest, to the mountains that stood like ancient sentinels beyond. I looked to the endless sky where I like to imagine Buddy is finally running free. I'd say, thank you. Thank you for placing your trust in me. Thank you for 40 years of quiet kinship. Thank you for teaching me that intelligence and heart are not solely human traits. That family can be woven from threads we never expect, and that sometimes the most profound thing, we can do is to be a guardian for someone who cannot guard themselves, and I'd tell him I'm sorry. Sorry it took me so long to share his epic with the world. Sorry the world was not yet ready for him. Sorry his life had to be a secret. But mostly I'd tell him what I told him every night for 4 decades. That he was loved, that he mattered, and that his life held a significance that would echo beyond what anyone else could ever grasp. The reporter quietly turned off her recorder. That's beautiful, Mr. Jason. Thank you. After she departed, I sat on that porch until the sun dipped below the horizon, a ritual I once performed before going to the barn to spend the evening with Buddy. The routine was a path worn into my very being, and I still felt its pull, a powerful urge to walk out there and see if he was all right. But the barn was empty. Buddy was gone. The secret was now a story for the world, and I was just an old man in the woods with nothing left but memories and the profound knowledge that I had done something truly extraordinary. And even if the world had remained oblivious to it for 40 years. If you've ever kept a promise for someone you love, let me know in the comments below. David and Jennifer visit regularly. Maria Garcia stops by to check on me. They worry I'm lonely, that I'm lost without Buddy. Maybe in a way I am. 40 years is a long chapter to dedicate to one purpose, one friendship. What does a man do when that chapter ends? But I have my solace. I have the journals. I have the photographs. I have 4 decades of memories stored in my heart. Memories of a friendship that by all accounts shouldn't have been possible, yet it was. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that Buddy's story is out there now for all to hear. His existence mattered. He'll be remembered not as a legend, but as a real thinking, feeling soul who deserved far more than the world was prepared to offer him. In my bedroom, I keep one treasured memento, Buddy's favorite picture card. It shows 2 simple stick figures standing side by side with a heart drawn between them. Family, love, brotherhood. That's what it meant. That's what we were. That's what we'll always be, even though he's gone. I'm 66 years old. I sheltered a living piece of North American folklore from the world for 40 years. And I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Because some friendships are worth any sacrifice. Some secrets are kept not from shame, but from a place of profound love. Share this story if you believe in that kind of loyalty. And sometimes the most remarkable thing an ordinary person can do is to recognize that something extraordinary deserves protection, dignity, and respect. Hit that like button if you agree. That was Buddy's gift to me. The privilege of protecting him, of knowing him, and of simply being his friend. Thank you for watching and for letting us share this with you.